and welcome to the Strategic Alignment Podcast. This program is all about providing leaders and managers with meaningful insights on how to optimize business results by aligning their people strategy to their business strategy. Our goal is to support you as you rise to the challenges of complex decision-making centered around attracting and retaining top talent.
Hello and welcome to the Strategic Alignment Podcast. I am your host, Chauna-Kaye Pottinger, this evening. It is great to have each and every one of you joining us today on the Strategic Alignment Podcast. This evening promises to be a very invigorating conversation that will take place between two friends. And we are so happy that you have chosen to join us on this platform. I just want to ask you to go ahead and hit that share button right now so that we can have others who are waiting to join in on this conversation to do so. So if you're on Facebook, I want you to go ahead and hit the share button. If you're on YouTube, go ahead and hit that share button. Somebody needs this information that we're sharing this evening. This evening, I'm joined by a very powerful friend of mine. And I know that you all will be happy with the conversation that is about to take place. You know, we are still in Women's History Month. It's the month of March. And one of the most recent statistic data that I came across was from the Women's Leadership Institute. And basically, this is an organization that collects data on women in leadership. And their most recent research has shown that globally, there are 24% of the positions that are considered to be senior leadership positions or roles are held by females. The other 76%, kind of trying to get off of my math there, but 76% are held by men, right? You know, the United States is kind of lagging behind because they're at 21%. So the world average is 24%, and the US is actually at 21% with that number, which is a striking contrast to countries like China, which now boasts a 50% number in terms of women in a senior leadership role. And if we look at what's happening in China in terms of innovation, we can truly say that, you know, that must have had something to do with it. And I know that many may be saying right now that it has something to do with my bias. But despite the numerous advances that we see taking place in technology and innovation, there is still what I consider to be a significant lag, even in things like bridging the pay gap. You know, there's still a struggle there as it relates to equity and equality. And so it is within that context that we bring you here this evening to have a conversation about, you know, the progress that has been made in terms of supporting and empowering women who are, you know, taking up their spaces in very powerful roles. And we're happy and excited that you're here this evening. And that's why we want you to go ahead and share this conversation with somebody that you know could benefit from the insights that we'll be sharing. Today we have with us a guest who I believe is an extraordinary trailblazer within the field of communication. She is a female leader within her own right, and she's a mother and entrepreneur. And she has done a masterful job, in my view, of being able to balance the scales of commanding the respect of others, her colleagues and her peers, while she's also likable. And so I want to welcome to the platform this evening, my friend, LaTasha Hewitt.
Yay! What an introduction. I don't think I've had one like that before, but I guess that's what happens when you're among friends, right?
Tasha, it's so good to have you. You know, we talk almost every day. We have conversations about these very troubling issues that we have or we face. We support each other in our respective roles. We work together. And it has been a joy to know you. But for the benefit of those who are on here this evening and may not know the LaTasha Hewitt, can you just give some insights into who is LaTasha Hewitt?
Oh, it's funny because this is always a question that I dread answering. It's hard for me to even describe myself. But, as you mentioned, I'm a wife, I'm a mother, I am a professional, I'm a real estate agent, I'm a friend, I'm a sister. There's so much that goes into who I am, but I'm definitely one of those people who's passionate about living on purpose and doing what I can to improve the spaces where God places me. I guess that's the way to describe me.
Tasha, I think you're being a little bit modest this evening, but I'm going to give you a pass on that because you're trying to, you don't want people to really know about how famous you are, but I'll leave it there. I want those of you who are on here this evening, I'm going to take you through an exercise before we get into the other aspects of the questions with LaTasha. I want you to close your eyes and just imagine a CEO or an engineer, a brilliant scientist. And for just 1 second, tell me what that person looks like.
This is for me?
I'm asking everybody who's on here right now, okay, Tasha, to sort of just to set the context for our conversation this evening, because that's an important question that, Tosh, I think the culture has driven us to believe that these roles are likely to be male roles. And that's one of the things that we want to talk about this evening in terms of shifting that mindset to know that females can also take up those spaces of leadership and they can do a pretty good job of that. And so, one of the first questions I wanted to ask you, because we've talked about some of the issues surrounding the struggle of women in this day and age. And one of them has to do with multitasking. And that's a big word because, a lot of us juggle the tasks of being homekeepers. We are the head chef. Sometimes we're the hairdressers, but also we have our full-time jobs. We have our side hustles. We have our businesses that we're trying to grow. Right. And I want to hear from you, Tasha. What are some of the things that you do to stay organized, in this multitasking age for a woman? How do you do all of that and still manage to be as successful as you are?
What a question. I think I'm still figuring that out. As time goes on, I feel like I'm getting a little bit better at it. I think for me, the key was establishing my priorities. What are my priorities right now? Because there were times when work was taking over where home time should be, or, trying to get things done in the house, but knowing you have a deadline and you're like, how do I do it all? And so I started to write things down because that's just how I process better. So I know all the tasks that need to be done. And I make a column of work task and home task. And sometimes throughout the day when I need a break from work, I'll go to my home task list and see what can I knock out before I have to get back to a work assignment. And I think it's helped me recognize this is important right now. Focus on these things. This is what's going to come up. You can do these things as well. And then making sure there's a healthy balance. Your list shouldn't be completely full of work where you're spending all of your time giving to others, where the people around you hardly see you, don't hear from you. And, my children are the type that will say, Mom, you've been working all day. So, they keep me in check with that. And it helps me keep my priorities straight. But definitely asking yourself the question, what are my priorities? And let that dictate your to-do list. And be intentional about writing things down. Because one thing is women, we're really good at multitasking. But sometimes when we don't get to those things that we've had in the back of our heads, we beat ourselves up about it. But if we can write them down and check them off, it helps keep that anxiety down with managing everything that we have to do on a daily basis.
I love it. I'm even though by trade I am a project manager, so part of my overall organizational abilities should be, it should be a little bit better than it is right now, Tasha, in essence. But I really do find that there are some very important tools, like either the reminders app on your phone or the Wonderlist and all of these apps that you can go ahead and just hit that button and you hear a ding once you've done it, and it's almost like that ding becomes a stimuli that you look forward to, and that does help you to remain organized and balanced. And I have to say, as one who's an onlooker, I see that you do a pretty good job of getting things, or getting through that list and getting things done and being effective. As we are celebrating the Women's History Month, as I said earlier, one of the things that we have to do is pause sometimes and reflect on, where we're coming from and where we are. And you are a part of the world of work. I'm also a part of the world of work. But I want to hear your personal evaluation of whether or not we are where we need to be, especially as it relates to the support and empowerment of female leaders. Do you think, Tasha, we're there? Are we there yet? I know that's a question that you probably are used to. Are we there yet, Tasha, when it comes on to the support and empowerment of women in leadership?
I don't think we're there yet, but I think we're making some strides. I will give credit where credit is due. I was listening to a presenter recently who said that it would take 250 years before women could actually make up for the time.
Pause. Did you say 250 years?
250 years.
Oh my God.
For women to actually take those roles or be equal to the roles of like CEOs that you mentioned earlier, for us to make up all this lost time that we have. And that's a long time. And I don't know about you, but I don't plan to be around that long. But that shouldn't deter us as women from using our gifts and our abilities. I'm not one of those people that likes to seek position, but I do like to use my gifts. And when that giftedness is seen, I use that as an opportunity to put myself in a position where I can enact change. And I think as women, when we have gifts and we have opinions and we have skill sets, it's time for us to not cower back and say, oh, that's a man. The men are going to be the CEOs. The men are going to, so let me just, I know I have this knowledge. I know I have this contribution, but we know how the world is. No, be who you are, put forth your gifts, your strengths. And the more consistent you are, the more people will acknowledge that. And before you know it, they're no longer looking at you as a female leader. They're looking at you as a strong leader who's competent. And I think, you talked about, are we, have we made strides or are we getting there? We're definitely not there yet because, we sometimes set ourselves up and I'll deal with women first. Sometimes we want to go to the men and blame them for, holding us back or not seeing our potential. But even as women, we have to do a better job of supporting other women. And when you're in a room and you hear men saying, oh, she's okay, but I don't really know if she's qualified for this. And that person is qualified and you're in that presence. That's your time to speak up for that female and say, actually, I think she would be great for that position, or I think that she has these attributes and, maybe you should reconsider what you're thinking about. I think when we start to do more of that, help lift each other up as women, listen, there's no stopping us. Listen,
we might just be able to fast track that 250 years.
Exactly.
Maybe. It won't happen in our lifetime, but we need to cut away at that. That's a good point that you make. Thank you for making that. And so I want to talk about, earlier on you mentioned purpose, and we want to talk about purpose because that's one of the things that keeps us centered. And at Pottinger and Associates Consulting, one of the things that we try to do is that we try to get our clients to understand and accept and acknowledge that their purpose is what should drive them.
Right.
And that's what's supposed to keep them centered. That's their compass. That's what tells you if you're going in the right direction. And so I want to hear from you whether or not you are a person who value the whole idea of living on purpose, and what role has purpose played in the multiple leadership roles, Tasha, that you currently play as communications director, as mom, as wife, and also as an entrepreneur?
I think I was one of those people. I know when I was younger, I knew I wanted to be a lawyer. I don't know why, but I had that in my mind. And then I changed my mind a little later on. And I realized that the reason I wanted to be a lawyer at that young age is because I wanted to help people who were in trouble, or who needed some support, or to be on their side, and even though that didn't work out, and I won't even tell you why. Someone once said to me, lawyers have to lie. And I was like, oh. Don't tell kids this, okay, guys. This is what don't tell kids. Yeah. So oh no, I would never want to lie. So that killed my lawyer dream as a child. But even though I couldn't pinpoint, I mean, I saw certain giftedness, even in choosing majors. I knew I liked to read and write, so English seemed like a good fit. So I went along with it. But majors to me don't really define your purpose. It's kind of a direction where maybe your purpose can be found. And so as I began to grow as a person and listen, it was really hard for me to hear compliments. So when I would hear people compliment me on certain things, I would push it aside. I wouldn't absorb it. I wouldn't allow myself to feel it. And I got to the point where I realized by doing that, I'm not even understanding what my gifts are, or what others can see in me that I can give back. And so when I started to listen a little bit more and take note of what people were saying, I realized that my purpose, even though it can be defined in different ways, is I like to help people. I mean, I know that sounds general, but I like to problem solve. I like to figure out, what do you need and how can I help you get it? What kind of information do you need to hear and how can I provide that for you, in communication? What are you lacking that me and my role can help you obtain? As an agent, you're looking for a home. This can be a very stressful time. How can I make that time for you so much better? And so for me, that gives me purpose to know that when I come into the equation, your experience is much better. Excellent. And that's why I can do different things, because different arenas allow me to be helpful to others in those ways and to make real change. I don't like being places where there's nothing I can do or contribute to the situation. And so my purpose is to come somewhere and make a difference. And that's kind of the general thing right now, but it actually, helps navigate what I decide to do in my life. How is this impactful? How is this helping?
Excellent. And I got from what you were saying is that other people sort of helped you to be anchored in your purpose. And sometimes that external validation, and even that person that said to you that if you're a lawyer, you have to lie, may have steered you along a path that you just never know. You just never know how. So there's a balance to be had there as far as how many people you choose to listen to when you're
that's important. That's important. Your circle.
Yeah. Just on a regular basis now, we want to talk about personal life experiences and some of the things that can be helpful as we chart our journey, especially within our different roles as female leaders, has to do with, how do we reflect and learn from things that we've been through and experiences. How are these experiences helping us to chart our course as far as the next steps that we're going to be taking in decision making and so on? So I'd like to hear from you, Tasha. Share with us an experience that you would consider to be, this is one of the biggest lessons and best lessons that I've learned as female leader.
As a female leader. That's a good one. I think for me, not that I can necessarily pinpoint one event, but I think when I had a teacher, and I'm going to go back really far because even then I wasn't leading. I had a teacher point out something that I had done in class and to say pretty much, the way LaTasha wrote this is how I want the rest of you to do it. And for me, I'm like, I was really shy as a child, and to have her kind of lift me up as an example was very uncomfortable for me. But I recognized the fact that her recognizing that particular gift or that particular strength of mine gave me the opportunity to help others who wanted to know, well, how did you do that? Or how can I do it that way? And so I recognized then that being a leader means that when you shine, it's not about you, it's about how you can help others shine.
Wow.
And for me, that gave me this thing like, well, okay, it's okay to do well so that others can do well as well.
Yes.
So
yes.
It was pivotal to me because I kind of looked at, leadership is being in the front and everybody has to follow you. And it was like, no, leadership is about reaching back, giving, so that you can train future leaders.
Wow. That's powerful. That is powerful, Tasha, because, one of the things that we don't do enough is that we don't necessarily spend as much time evaluating our influence and the level of influence that we have, and making it an intentional effort to try to ensure that that influence is one that's being exuded the way that I want it to come across.
Right.
And I think that that's very powerful, what you just shared a while ago, in terms of, that validation that you got from your teacher is not something negative, even though it made you uncomfortable. And right. I want to hear from our viewers, if if you have any questions or anything that you want us to go ahead and ask LaTasha, you can go ahead and put those in right now. Tasha, we're coming up to the juicy part now, because
okay, I'm ready for it.
This part of the discussion is really why we came, and those who are watching, that's why they're here, right? We talked about earlier the struggle and the journey that women encountered, and this particular author, Joan Williams, she wrote in one of her books called What Works for Women at Work. Mm-hmm. And the whole essence of her book was that she drew on research data that she was using to help women to derive strategies that will help them to balance out the equation when it comes on to being liked and respected at work. Mm-hmm. And so, Tasha, I know that this is material that you have delved into as well. And I wanted, for the purposes of those who are here, to sort of go through some of the things that she highlighted. One of them had to do with having to prove ourselves over and over again as women in the workplace. And that is one challenge that women face. So that whereas you have a situation where a male might be evaluated based on their potential, a woman is normally judged based on their performance. And I want that to sink in for a little bit.
Yeah.
So that, when I do something, it's being measured against what was supposed to be done and what did she do. But when a male is being judged, the research is showing that they're likely to be judged based on, they have the potential to do a lot better. Right. Can you speak to that just a little bit and help us to understand whether or not these are actual things? Is her research off base, Tasha?
I don't think it's off base, and I don't discount research. If the facts are the facts, we can't deny them. And as a woman, I do believe that there is this pressure to prove it again, to say, I'm not just here as a female to take up space, or because I need to fill some quota or make, the organization look like it's balanced between male and female. My contributions mean something. And sometimes you do something and, I'm not the type that compares what I do to someone else or my male counterpart, but you recognize that it takes a little bit of time of you consistently doing something as a woman before it's recognized as, okay, you're legitimately qualified. Like, you weren't just, okay, so you're not just a female who we need to fill a position, and you were available, and so they put you there. Oh, you really do have a skill set. And, I try to kind of put that thought out of my head, even though I know it's there. I consider myself a hard worker anyway. And so I know that I'm going to allow my work to speak for me. I don't need to say, okay, do they like me yet? Do they see my skills yet? I like my work to speak for itself. But I have seen exactly what you described, where a male could do half the work, put half the effort. And, there are people who still find ways to complement what they're doing, or to not chastise them when something goes wrong. Where if it happens to a female, that you might be called in for a special review, or
yes,
it's like we can't make mistakes. Like you said, our potential, it's like we're almost destined to fail or disappoint. Whereas men, if they fail or disappoint, it's okay, they'll get better. Sometimes that's the mentality, but I say women, continue to be the strong women that you are. We don't have to put on, and as women, we're intelligent. We've gone to school, we've studied, we've gotten the experience that we need. And so be consistent with that, because your work will speak for itself eventually. And don't get caught up in what they see or what they don't see.
Right.
Because, like I said, your work will speak for itself.
Tasha, I can't wait for us to get to this next one that you talked about. The tightrope that we have to walk. Whew. And this tightrope is, if you are too feminine and you act in that way and you exude that work, there is a tendency that you will be viewed as not respected, because they can't take you seriously.
Right.
And then on the other extreme, if you put on this masculine demeanor, it almost comes off as, oh, you're respected, but you're not liked. And so it's like, it's almost like you have to make a choice between one or the other. And so those female leaders that actually come out and do well from the research data that came out are those that are able to toe that line. And I have to say, LaTasha, I think that you are the epitome of that. I've observed you
as well, Chauna-Kaye.
No, Tasha, there are cases where I would have blown a fuse, and I've seen you just sit down and calmly just manage that situation. So talk about that for a little bit to just help us understand what are some of the strategies that we can put in place as females dealing with that kind of a situation, with being liked versus being respected.
Yeah, and I've been in those situations where even though it was said in jest, oh, well, we know she's here because she's pretty to look at, or she's nice to look at, and it's like, excuse me, like, do people really say these things out loud? And am I supposed to be flattered by this? I was actually offended, and I have to say that I didn't say that in the moment, because I was a little taken aback that was even said. Because I never want to be seen, or that I'm in my place or in any position because of the way I look, or that, the way I make people feel when I'm in the room. That's not, I want them to feel like, okay, here's someone who's going to contribute to the discussion. Here's someone who's going to contribute to the job getting done. And so my thing for me is always be true to myself. I'm a woman. I consider myself a feminine woman. I'm not overly like, you won't see me take out my compact and, fix my makeup in a meeting or anything like that. But I'm not the, sitting in a meeting, like with my posture serious either. So for me, I have to be my authentic self. I can't allow myself to be consumed by, what is this posture conveying? Oh, if I say this, will they think I'm that? It just takes too much time and energy for me. But yet, when you talk about being strategic, you do have to be aware of certain things. You do have to, make sure that you dress a certain way. And for me, dressing a certain way doesn't mean that I'm still not being cute or, showing my fashion sense here and there. It means that I am recognizing that if I'm going into a serious meeting, my top can't go all the way to show all this cleavage, so that the tension is there and not to what I'm saying. I mean, there are certain considerations we do have to make. But at the same time, I would say it's more about you knowing who you are and being confident in what you have to offer, not just as a female, but as a person. And so that you don't get too much in your head about, okay, am I too feminine or am I too masculine today? When you're authentically yourself, it allows you to kind of cancel out all of that noise and focus on the task at hand. And by the time you open your mouth and people hear what you have to say, they're more focused on that instead of what box they want to put you in that day. So I guess that would be my strategy. Be confident in who you are. You can't go into a situation as a female leader and allow the room to dictate to you who you are, because you'll be all over the place. So it's very important to get that part of yourself together. Like, have those conversations with yourself. Be confident in who you are, so that when you hear comments like the one I heard, it doesn't take you off your game. You put it in its proper place and you move forward. But you just remain true to who you know you are and what you come to do that day in that job.
Some of the things that were mentioned has to do with posture, and that our body language also is a factor in either exuding confidence or the lack of confidence. And those are some things that, as females, when you talk about being strategic, LaTasha, I think those are some of the things that we have to be mindful of. If you're sitting in your chair and you're slouching, a person have a hard time taking you seriously.
Yeah, you're too casual.
If you're leaning back like this, they have a hard time believing that you're interested in what's going on. And so there are certain things that we have to do to exude a certain level of confidence, and not necessarily to say that you need to, there's some people would say that you're sort of encouraging the behavior, right? Or you're, but I'm wondering if we are able to hone this in such a way, Tasha, that those individuals who would look at us, and not just the females in the room, but also the men who are looking at us being strategic. I'm wondering if that could help in terms of advancing the role for other people who are coming behind us, in terms of legacy building and so on, so that, what you do is going to be able to dictate the path that another person behind you will face. The last female leader we had in this role, she was a horrible mess. And so I do think that some effort and time should be spent in strategically planning around how you come off in terms of your confidence level, in terms of your professionalism, and so on as a woman. And I absolutely love that thing that you said about not allowing yourself to go into a room and allow the other people to dictate who you are. You go as your authentic self, and at the same time, you go quite aware of what's going on. So the other thing that we want to talk about is a maternal wall. And that's another challenge that females face. And I know, Tasha, I know your story, and that you probably have some real life situations that you could share in this conversation about that. And this is where, because you just got married or you just got engaged as a female, you're in a leadership role, people start saying, oh, she's going to start being less productive now because she's now a wife. And you hear those off the cuff remarks like, oh, do you have something to do with your child today, and so on. And so as females, we find ourselves having to calendar things in our calendar, like out of the office meeting today. Right? Yeah. So that people are not necessarily saying, oh, she's going to take her kid to the doctor, or so on and so forth. Because we are given this domesticated type of position and role. So let's talk about the maternal wall for a little bit, and how that affects females, and whether or not that's still something that's going on right now.
Yeah, I mean, that's always been the struggle, I think, with women. For a long time, women weren't really in the workplace. I mean, they were at home. They were, caretakers for the children. They kept the home up, and the man went out and made the money. Of course, times have changed drastically, but a lot of what we do as mothers and women has not changed. We still have to do all of those things in addition to working. And I know for me, I remember even in my current job, when I started there, I had just had my second daughter. I mean, I literally went to the office 2 days after, and I wasn't even thinking about, I have to prove myself as a female. At that point, I was thinking about, I have to prove that I'm here. I'm taking this job seriously.
Seriously, yes.
Even going into the interview pregnant, feeling like, wow, there's an elephant in the room, and it happens to be in my belly. I tried to be so strong in my interview that people would forget that I was even pregnant at that time, because I wanted them to see what I had to offer the organization, as opposed to, this one's about to have a baby, and, this could cause a problem for us. And even when I was there were some ladies that came to me and said to me, you really, you just had a child. You probably really need to take some time to spend with your baby and,
Yes.
heal up. And, and I appreciated that. It was almost as if they reminded me of something that I need to hear. Like, we know that you're qualified. We know you're here. We know you're going to do the job. But right now you need to be mom. And they gave me permission to do that. And fortunately, I had an administration that supported that and allowed me to go on to a proper maternity leave. But because of that consideration that was made for that stage of my life, it made me even more determined that when I came back, I was going to give this organization all that I had to offer. And I think for women, sometimes we feel like, oh, if I say that my child, I can't come to work because my child has an important recital that I want to be there. Oh, is that going to count as a strike against me?
Yes.
I don't, for me, if you're doing your work and you've shown that your work gets done, as a female, take those moments. Don't say, oh, I don't want to be perceived. Because what happens at the end of the day, when you're past that job and your children have grown up and you realize you don't really have a relationship with them because you spent most of your time trying to impress your employers who could replace you at any moment if you decide to leave, it's like that's not your priority. The key is to do your job so well that even when you're gone, they still know it's going to get done because they have confidence in your ability. And that's the precedent you have to set so that when you do have to be mom, when you do have to take the day off to tend to mommy duties, no one's concerned about the workload getting dropped. And I think for me, I had to learn that. I had to learn, okay, when it's time to pick up the kids from school, I'm leaving the office.
Right.
I'll finish the work at home. And it's going to be okay. It's like you have to have that conversation with yourself. Like, you staying here 2 more hours just so everyone else will feel like you're doing what you're supposed to do is not going to make a difference. Perception cannot dictate how you live your life because you're always going to miss out. So as moms, for you moms out there, doing well. And I have 2 daughters, so I want them to see me succeeding at work so that they can be inspired to work hard. But I don't want to see them failing as a mother either. I want them to know that even though work is important, I'm even more important to my mother. And so that's why we have to make sure that we're not afraid to take those moments with our children because they grow so fast. The kids grow so fast and you're like, do I even know this child? And so, I say, take those mommy moments, but before, you got to make sure you're doing your work though. If you're a slacker, you really make it bad for the rest of us who work hard and want to spend time with their children. But if you're a slacker and you're doing that, it gives a bad connotation for all of us. As women, we have to recognize what we do can impact what happens to the female that comes behind us. And so it's important to keep that in mind.
And that is a perfect segue. That comment that you made is a perfect segue as we deal with the tug of war that takes place with other women. Because when, for some reason, research data now is showing that females feel a lot better working with male leaders. Nice. And what this whole theory is about is that we tend to, as females, we actually consolidate all 3 of the factors that we just discussed. Your counterpart has to prove, especially if she's a leader, has to prove herself over and over again, because you've been through that and you just want to put your female peer through that. Yeah. And then you have the whole issue of the maternal wall. You have the whole issue of it's slipping me right now, Tasha. What's the next one that we talked about again?
The tug of war. That's the one. Like the maternal, the prove it again, and then the masculinity. The femininity.
Like the birth is being respected. So you have these females in the organization that give you a hard time as a leader because they choose not to support your leadership on the basis that, hey, if I had to struggle, and then the other thing is, there isn't enough space for everybody at the top. And so you have this competition that's going on where because you only have 24% or 21% of these roles that are going to females. Tasha, I need to step on your head in order to get there. How can we change the course or break that cycle in terms of, not perpetuating the very same abuses that we've experienced on other female leaders that may be placed beside us as colleagues or above us?
Mm-hmm. I think a lot of that stems from insecurity, and you're not really knowing where you fit in and what your gifts are. Because if you know your lane, if you know what you could contribute, and you see another female who also has something to offer, why does that have anything to do with you? If anything, you support each other so you can both grow. When you're not sure of what you have and you're not confident in your contributions, that's when you look at this other female like, wait, are they better than me? Are people going to look at them as the female star? And I've never quite understood that thought process. And I've experienced a little bit of, female hate. And I don't pay attention to it. People have to bring it to my attention. I have to say that. People have to say, oh, did you know so-and-so said that, this, that you shouldn't wear that or you shouldn't wear this? I'm like, oh, really? Oh, that's interesting. And it's almost, it wasn't even about what I was wearing, more so than downplaying, trying to find something negative towards me so that what others were affirming in me could be downplayed.
Diminished.
Like, yeah, she may be this or that, but did you see what she had on? I mean, it's like, really? Are we doing this to each other in 2021? And so I think as women, if you find yourself having those thoughts, even if you never verbalize them, if you find yourself having those thoughts, it's time to look at yourself and do some self-reflection and say, who am I? Who do I want to be? And concentrate on working on you. Your attention should never be on another female in a way where you're trying to cut them down or chop them down to size. And I've seen women do this with other men. So you're in a company of other men chopping down your sister. And then you wonder why men don't view female. And when it's your turn to come to the spot, they're like, well, you just told us how women are. So why would we want you in the space? And so I think we need to do a better job of lifting each other up. I know even from the article that I was reading that a lot of times older women feel like, oh, like you said, I had to go through it, so you need to earn your way up as well. Where it's no, I know as a woman, my goal is to mentor other women so that they don't have to go through some of the things that I went through, so that it's easier for them to accomplish things that I had to work my way through. And I think we always have to have a mindset that we're not here to battle each other. We're here to hold hands and lift each other up and watch us both rise in purpose. Because your purpose and my purpose, Chauna, are not the same. So we can coexist in the same spot, contributing different things to the same organization without feeling like we have to go toe to toe, or, you know what I mean? I think there's space for everyone. Your gifts make room for you.
Make room for you.
So we don't have to try to be the female that, fits into that little 21% or 24% that you mentioned.
I love it. Tasha, you've done it, we're coming towards the end of the interview because, we're getting to the time frame now where we want to get to learn some more about you and what you're reading right now.
Okay.
We want to hear what you're reading right now because, we're a big fan of reading. We're big fans of reading. We support that, and I know that that's something that you do as well. You didn't even talk about your editing that you do for authors and so on. But is there a book that you're reading right now that we all should be reading, or one that you've read recently that you would encourage people to read, especially around this subject?
Well, I've been reading Barack Obama's book, The Promised Land. I think it's good. And I read Michelle Obama's book previously. And I always think that when you see leaders that you admire or certain traits that you want to emulate, that it's always good to kind of look back and read and reflect on some of the lessons they've learned that you can kind of actually glean from, so you can understand how they got to that point and even prevent some of those pitfalls based on them sharing their experience. So I really like what I'm reading. I'm not done with that book yet, but I'm still reading it. And then from a kind of a leadership point of view, I was recently gifted the book, The 12-Week Year. I think I'm saying it right. And it's pretty much showing how you can, if you plan your life in 12-week segments, meaning these are my goals, this is what I'm going to do in week 1, 2, 3, and actually write them down, you're more likely to accomplish tasks. Because I am very task oriented. I'm the type of girl that likes to check off those boxes and feel like I've accomplished something. And so this book really is great for leaders who have a goal that they want to see realized within a realistic time frame. And so I definitely like that book. I think it's called The 12-Week Year. So it's pretty much breaking your life down in quarter segments, so that you're not year after year saying, oh yeah, I wanted to do that. Oh yeah, I wanted to do that. And your goals aren't being realized because you're not strategically mapping out how they can be realized.
Great. I'm going to be able to go and look those up and see if I could just add that to my reading list for this year. I'm still listening to my Audible from the last guest that we had, and it's blowing my mind, this book called Emotional Agility. And I'm going to encourage everyone to go ahead and get that book, because I'm telling you, some nuggets are in that. They're so powerful, ridiculously powerful. Tasha, for the sake of vulnerability, and I know that this is not one of your most comfortable spaces when it comes on to that topic, but to date, what would you say is your greatest achievement as a woman, as a leader, and also as a mom, a wife, in your different roles? What would you consider to be your greatest achievement to date?
You're talking about being comfortable. It's really hard for me to look at things as achievements. I look at them as tasks that I checked off. It's other people who have to say, do you realize that you did X, Y, Z, or this happened? I don't see it that way. It's weird. It's like, I don't see this as an accomplishment. I see this as me setting a goal and it got done. And so when I think about that question, I think my greatest achievement, and it's not an event or an accolade, it's me taking the time to get to know who Tasha is. Because once I was able to do that, I think a lot of other things in my life fell into place. I think once I did the work, like I said, I was a shy child. I was the background person. I was the one who observed. I didn't get into the action. I didn't contribute to class discussions, unless they called on me. And I think taking the time to recognize that, one, I'm a child of God. One, he's placed in me special gifts, and it's my duty to find out what those are, but not just recognize what they are, but use them. I think is the greatest achievement I gave myself, because I have that awareness. I can do more. I can live more on purpose. And so the things that I accomplish in my lifetime, I'm less focused on that, more so than I am being able to impact the lives of others.
Well, Tasha, it has been fun. We're going to go to our live Q&A at this time. We're going to ask our viewing audience to go ahead and post those questions in the chat. We have time for about 5 of those. We have a question here, even though it says Jamie Pottinger on here. It's not from Jamie. It's from Anne-Marie C. Davis. She says that some females tend to get frustrated with such biases, and we sometimes vent. And she said that personally, I love to challenge the males at work. I literally call them out on their biases. And Tasha, do you think that that's a good and appropriate thing to do when it happens?
I think it is. I think there's a time to do it and a way to do it. I mean, I think it has to be done constructively, though, because if not, they can sometimes use that to put us right back into that box of, they're too emotional, or they can't handle the male environment. But I do think I like the word that she used in terms of challenge. I mean, ask them a question. So what did you mean by that? I've done that. So what were you really trying to say in that situation? so that they have to voice it. And in them voicing it, they recognize how biased it is and sometimes can self-correct. But I do think it's important to speak up now, because a lot of men, I will give men credit, a lot of men don't even recognize their bias until someone points it out.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's our duty sometimes to help them realize it, because for some, it's not their intent. And when we can help bring it to their attention, they won't do it again. But if you keep quiet, then another female's going to have to experience it, who may not be ready to hear that comment from them. And then, things can get interesting.
Yeah, that's a good point that you make. And then there are other situations where it's not necessarily directed at you, the bias, right?
Right.
So we do this sometimes, Tasha, where if we're in a meeting and I see where there's a comment that you would make and it would be overlooked, or you see equally the same thing happening, where you go in and you say, well, as Tasha just said a while ago, I think that was an excellent point that Tasha made. When she said it, she said this and that, because sometimes what happens is you'll give the idea, you'll give it out in the meeting, and then it's overlooked. A male gives the idea, says the same thing, or gives a suggestion that's quite similar.
Wow.
And it's like a record moment for everybody. Wow, So it's very important too that you have that kind of a support system going, where if you as another female see another female that is being overlooked, that you can also find subtle ways to support that other colleague, so that their opinions are respected and valued on the very same level. And you can point it out that this was what Tasha said earlier.
So that you don't have to say, "Hey, Shauna said that earlier." You say, "You know what? That's true," and that's kind of what Shauna was bringing out earlier when she said XYZ. And it's kind of like, like everybody has to have that, be a little awkward nod, but it's been established that wasn't the first time that comment was made, and who originally said it.
Yeah. So I appreciate what you just shared a while ago. And Jenny, okay, that's Jamie. He's pasting some of the comments from the other platforms here. To say that there will always be gender issues in the workplace. Let's hear what the great Madam Esquire has to say. She said that the accommodations that female leaders make to find common ground in the workplace is unrelated to performance, but all about stereotype. Do you think family leave laws that support male family time equally to female family time could help to level the gender playing field? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I remember this issue when I was actually at another organization, and there was a gentleman who his wife was having a child, and he requested leave, and it was almost, people looked at him like he had three eyes. Like, what do you mean? Like, your wife's having the baby, you're gonna come back to work, and that's kind of when it first came to my attention that, wow, women are given this this leave, and sometimes men have to fight for a certain amount of leave. But I do think that if we want to get to the point where it's equal playing field, that the same things that are extended to females have to be extended to fathers. Now, granted, for maternity leave, obviously there's some healing time that's being factored in there. But for men, they want to bond with their children as well as they are becoming newborn. Now, I do that first part of that comment in terms of it's stereotype over performance. I do think that sometimes your performance can outweigh the stereotype, because like you mentioned before, Shauna, sometimes they may have had the experience with another female in a leadership position who may have been this way. And when you as a female come and show, oh, that's not how all females are, or this is a different approach to female leadership, it can open up and change what they had in their mind, that construct they had in the mind of what a female in leadership looks like. And sometimes you can overcome that. I mean, I guess I just don't want us to feel defeated as women that this will always be there. I mean, of course, no matter where we go, there's going to be some bias, but I do think that we can take strides to help overcome some of those stereotypes.
Yeah, I agree. And but even for the sake of this conversation, though, I just want to point out that we wouldn't want to necessarily focus on the exceptions when you have these exceptional females. And as we talked about the prove it again theory, where you always have to prove it over and over again that you can do the job, you still have that barrier that you still have to overcome. And we're not diminishing the fact that that's definitely still a challenge that we have to work on, and challenge our sons and our male counterparts to still do better in that regard every single time we get a chance to. So, LaTasha, this is the last question. Where can the people find you if they're trying to get in contact with you for any reason? I mean, we know all the stuff that you have to offer, all the services that you offer. Where can they find Tasha Hewitt?
Where can I be found? Well, I am on Facebook. My name is LaTasha Hewitt. You can find me there. Of course, as I mentioned earlier, with my real estate, I do have a page there, which is LaTasha Hewitt Homes. You can follow me there for tips regarding that. And my email for that is easy, LaTashaHewittHomes@gmail.com. That's one way to reach me. But I do respond to Messenger, and I do check my emails. So, I am a communicator at heart. So when people reach out to me, I do try to get back to them as much as possible. And I do like interacting with people, and I do like answering questions. I give things from my perspective. If it can help people, then I'm more than willing to share. And so I'm here.
Awesome.
Yes,
Awesome. Yes, ma'am. Well, guys, we are so grateful that you joined us for this very lovely conversation. My friend, I always enjoy sitting down and having a nice conversation with you. I think we did an excellent job of covering this topic, and happy Women's History Month to you.
Yes,
and all the women online.
Continue to women, we rock! Yay!
We just want to encourage those of you who are on here right now to just recognize and understand that you have every right to sit at that table. You have every right to allow your voice and your suggestion and your contribution to be heard, because you're just as brilliant, you're just as smart, you're just as competent. You don't need to prove your competence to anybody. Just go out there, as LaTasha said, and be your authentic self and deliver the goods, add value to people's life, live on purpose. And by God's grace, you will make a way for other females who are trying to advance into leadership roles. Thank you guys so much for joining us. And we're going to leave you with this comment from my dear friend. Women run things. Have a good night, everyone. God bless you. Bye-bye. Bye. Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Strategic Alignment Podcast. We hope you enjoyed this episode. Please subscribe to our podcast by visiting our website at www.pottingerandassociatesconsulting.com.